What's up, guys? If you're looking for a barber, you got to go see my guy, Danny Roberts, at Sheer Savage Salon in Hillsboro. It's at 317 East Main Street. Give him a call, 937-393-2404. You're a man now. It's time to start going to a real barber instead of these cheap places. Go see Danny Roberts, Sheer Savage Salon. And if you're a lady, you can go there too. They have much more lady stylists than the men at this point. He's my guy. Go see him and mention that Idea Factory sing.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, guys. Welcome back. So this week we have Kyle Dickerson back once again, and for the first time we're doing a Zoom guest. So this time we have Jason Thompson, the athletic director at the Mount Orb Sports Complex. What's going on, man?
What's up, guys? How are you?
So, frankly, I've kind of been nervous actually about starting this conversation. This is. It's something that it's on all of our minds, but, it's something that you always hear, well, we got to start the conversation. We got to start the conversation of policing in America. But I'm starting to realize that very rarely do we actually have a conversation about it. So I wanted to get really as many guests as possible and just, people's expertise. We like to have people on where we read a book or we have some sort of interest in a topic or what have you. But in this case, everybody's an expert. Everybody's an expert because we're all citizens of this country. That's the only expertise that you need because we're all part of this, and it's, we've been talking earlier about just how between the COVID thing and, now with the George Floyd situation and the protests and the rioting, it's almost like too much information. It's too much to handle. So I just wanted to get you guys together and just have a conversation, whatever that means, and look at, what's the future of this? How do we, what's our end goal, or what's the next step in this? So.
Well, guys, thanks for having me on. It's a privilege to be on your podcast. I do a podcast myself, strictly about sports, and I know how hard it is to get these things going and to come up with topics and to get listenership and to be relevant. Like with podcasts, the whole key is relevancy, and that's what we're all aiming to get. And so if I can help you guys become more relevant or get some relevancy in terms of something that we all live and deal with in our existence, it is my privilege to do that. First thing I'll say is, my message to everyone would be like, protect your kids and keep your kids away from as much of this buffoonery and foolery that's going on in the world as possible. Because our kids today is our future tomorrow. And if we don't protect them from the nonsense that's going on now, this nonsense recycles in it and it happens again. And we don't want this to happen again. I'm probably as positive as a person that you'll find. All you guys in that room have been around me at some point in time, maybe not for lengths of time, but even being around me for a short amount of time. Something that I try to be is a ray of sunlight to the people that are around me. I try to put a smile on somebody's face, even when I'm going through hard times. And a lot of the hard times that I face are from being a Black man in a rural community. Born and raised in Ripley, graduated from Ripley, played sports at Ripley, was recently inducted in the Hall of Fame at Ripley. But my whole purpose as a kid was to prove my worth, and because I was different. And a person shouldn't have to prove their worth because they're different. You shouldn't have to live your life doing that. something that I really, I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight, but I hope that we can touch on, I don't believe personally that this is black versus white. I don't believe that this is a race issue. I think that this is an issue that consists of love versus hate. And oftentimes we run into situations where people say, we need to put an end to racism. We need to put an end to racism. We need to put an end to racism. Well, I talk to people in layman's terms, and I speak to large groups. And one of the things that I talk about in helping people is, if you have a flower in your garden or in your flower bed that you don't like, you can get your hedgers and you can cut the flower. You can chop the plant. You can chop the flower. But when it rains, it's going to grow back, right? But you have to dig down and get the root to get the plant to stop growing, right? So in order to get rid of racism, we have to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is hate. And so, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I believe that too much of this is focused on race relations and not enough focus on the separation between love and hate. And I think that that's where we stand, and I think that that's the first part of fixing the problem. The problem is with the police officers, but the only reason it's with the police officers is because they have the badge and the gun. So they're allowed to do more than the average Joe citizen, because for every cop that kills someone, there's a regular citizen that's not an officer of the law that also wants to kill someone based on prejudice or based on hate. And so I just feel like we need to get to the root of the problem, which is hate.
So, I mean, this situation has really kind of opened my eyes of what we should expect of cops and what, if anything, should happen. I mean, if should it be more training required? Chris Rock had a great bit about, he goes, cops are underpaid. He's like, I'll say it. He said, cops are underpaid, but you get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with everything in life.
So comedians are good social commentators sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes me really think, what if cops' salary was double? But in order to get a double salary, whatever that number would look like, instead of a 6-month police academy training, you have a 4-year college degree. I mean, if I was talking with my boss about kind of this topic earlier, and I was like, hey, it's like, at some point somebody decided, for me to draw pictures of buildings and for them to be structurally sound and safe, you need to go to school for minimum 4 years, 6, sometimes 7 for if you want to get a graduate degree. That's just so that you're I'm just drawing pictures of buildings, man, and giving them contractors to draw, but or to build. I mean, but a cop has a license to kill, essentially. You're handed a gun, and so long as there's some sort of merit into an action that can kill another person, then most of the time we're seeing these guys get away scotch-free.
What if they could, instead of having a cop work the beat like every week, 5 days a week, maybe after 6 months, you got to take a month off and just stay in the office, cool down? Because like this guy probably didn't just get mad that day. It's been months building up where his stress, everybody's job gives them stress.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy, anybody he pulls over could have a gun. He doesn't know. I'm not saying that this guy was right. He was definitely wrong, but every cop is stressed out. So give him some kind of a break. Don't keep him out there for 20 years dealing with this paranoia all the time.
Yeah.
To make a snap decision.
Yeah. I think that I don't think that cops take enough sensitivity training. Like, in order to be the ideal, so I'm gonna take you back in time to history. The first original job of a cop, of a police officer, of an officer of the law was to retrieve runaway slaves. That's why police officers were invented in the first place, was to retrieve runaway slaves. And then the Constitution was invoked, and once people began to have rights, it became a job of a person to protect and serve. And I think that a lot of the BS that goes on with police officers on a day-to-day basis is what stimulates the reactions that they have in certain situations. I think a lot of their life situations, like for a lot of us, your livelihood is your career. Like, I'm a sports guy. So for me, my livelihood is sports. I mean, I'm at the complex all day. Then I come home and then I do a podcast. Then on Monday nights, I go run a golf league. And then on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, I train kids. And then I'm the head basketball coach at Felicity. Everything I do revolves around sports. Everything a lot of people do is driven by career. And as an officer of the law, it's one of those jobs that it's hard to go in and out of character, man. Because someone is, if you're on duty and you're in Kroger and you see someone stealing, you're on the clock. It's your job to stop them from stealing. If you're off the clock and you're in Kroger, your instincts just don't change at the snap of a finger to where, okay, I'm gonna let this guy sneak out of here with these crab legs because I'm not on duty at somebody else's job. Like, the job of a police officer is the hardest job to go in and out of character because you don't ever clock out. You know, you don't ever clock out. And so I don't condone, I'm pissed off about what happened to George Floyd. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm mad for two reasons. I'm mad as a black man and I'm mad as a man because it shouldn't have happened. You know, it shouldn't have happened. But at the same time, as we're talking about, police officers don't have enough responsibility, you know, and something that we don't want to talk about, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm sorry if it's
That's
wrong.
Why we're talking. That's
the wrong
that's
direction.
Exactly why we're talking.
Bring it on.
I think one of the issues is, you know, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, we separated the church and the state, and we took prayer out of schools. And so, and I'm going to say something to you here, and I hope none of you are atheists, but how can you have a man policing a beat and expect him to have faith in humanity if he doesn't have faith in God?
That's a good point. Kyle, why don't you jump in on that?
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. You might not know. I've seen you around some of the basketball games I ref, but I'm a youth minister in Bethel, actually.
Okay.
And yeah, I know police officers that, you know, have come to the churches I've been at, and yeah, I mean, like Dallas and like you were saying, there's days where it's like you hear about what they had to go through, and it's like, that sounds awful.
Like, yeah, my computer crashed. Yeah, that was
was
a real bummer.
Yeah, I need to get my oil changed.
Yeah.
Woe is me.
Yeah. We had very similar days.
I mean, I had two guys drop out of my golf league last night, and I was irate. That was the worst thing that happened to me last night. A group had to play by themselves.
Yeah.
You know, so like for us, it's different, man. It's different. But I think that there has to be some kind of base put on with to whom much is given, much is received. So to whom God has blessed with a lot of opportunity, they have a lot of responsibility, so to speak. So the greater the opportunity, the more responsibility the opportunity has. You know, Tiger Woods is a golfer. He was given the gift to be the greatest golfer ever. There came a responsibility to win often. My Jordan James is the greatest to win. With being a police officer, there is a lot of responsibility. And when given the gift of being one to protect and serve, you have to adhere to the responsibility. And I think that not enough is put. I had a prayer in the park up here Sunday, up at Mount Orb, right in the park, 6:00, catching flack from my black buddies because I'm turning the other cheek. You know, I'm on the wrong side of the fence, you know, because I want to go up to the park and pray with people as opposed to run around and throw bricks and cocktail bombs through people's window. That's not what God puts on my heart. Two wrongs don't make a right. And I think that we have too many police officers that feel threatened, that feel unsafe. And because they feel threatened and feel unsafe, our black men feel threatened and feel unsafe. What's wrong with having a community? What do you do at the school when you have a big basketball game? Remember when we were in school, Dallas, you had a big basketball game. What happened when you played Ripley on homecoming night at Lynchburg? Had a pep rally every Friday on homecoming at 2:00, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's wrong with the community pep rally that is led by a policeman and not a black man, but people? People. What's wrong with love? Like Dr. King's message. So Dr. King, and this is something I told someone the other day. And if I'm talking too much, just tell me to shut up. But I got a lot on my mind about this stuff, man.
You're good.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, what is one of the things that you remember about a Dr. King speech in American history class? We all went through that civil rights chapter of I did. They at least taught it when I was in school. By the time you guys were in school, it might have been gone. But the civil rights chapter, I learned that he gave a speech where he had a dream where little white girls and little black boys would hold hands. That's happening, right? He had a dream that someone would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. You guys think enough of me to have me on your podcast. That's happening, right? So a lot of the things that the civil rights activists were preaching and were making a play for, we have today. What separates us now is there's two sides of the fence. And there's a side of the fence that believes in God and believes in eternal life and believes in treating thy brother the way that you want to be treated, thy brother in the way you want to be treated. And then there's the side that hates people, because the cops who hate black people also hate white people who like black people.
Yeah, that's true.
So what would you think is like a real hard, like tangible thing that can just make the situation and just make policing in America better? I mean, if it's outside of training, outside of a higher pay or whatever, do you guys have ideas on like just things that would improve things? You have thoughts on that? So I really like the one. I'll give you guys some time to think on that. I really liked. I want to push my boy again. I really like Andrew Yang's idea about every cop in America should be a purple belt. I mean, Kyle, I know you're a black belt. Is it in
Yes.
jiu-jitsu or what?
Taekwondo.
Okay.
Yeah. My thoughts on that, I get the concept of like, I'm guessing Yang's idea there was better restraining techniques, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it's I heard him talk at a what are those things called? I want to say an open house, but a
Town hall.
Yeah, about how that would, one, it just kind of improves your just respect of other human beings in general. Just I'm not into Taekwondo or jiu-jitsu or any of that stuff, but from what I understand, it just kind of improves your interpersonal skills with other people. But two, it gives you at least a baseline talent of like, if this person across from me tries to make a move, like I'm at least not, dependent on, some level of training that's just given to me, from the police academy.
They'd be more comfortable in conflict too. They're not going to freak out as bad.
Reach for their gun.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. First.
Yeah, I agree.
That
Brad.
can't be the first move.
No.
Yeah. I agree. With the martial arts background, there's been like tense situations I've been in, just in different scenarios. But the tough thing is seeing martial arts world. It's great knowledge to have, and I think the downfall is knowledge doesn't always address character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so much of what we saw, especially in the Minnesota situation, Minneapolis, is a lack of character in that moment.
Of course. Yeah. And that goes back to what Jason was talking about. I mean, we got to dig at the core rather than, just.
Yeah.
What about mental health evaluations? What type of mental health evaluations do these guys go through?
That's a great
question.
I don't know.
When I'm looking at David Shaven or whatever, when I'm looking at him sitting on this man like this, I don't know. And if you didn't see it, go back and watch the video.
That's rough.
He looked like the cop that like Shaven looked like he was like not inside of his body.
Mm-hmm.
Soulless.
Yeah.
Like go back and watch that, man. He looked like he was like outside of his body. And that is a mental health issue. I'm
glad you mentioned that.
I suffer from anxiety a little bit because of the world that we live in. And I suffer from depression a little bit off sometimes, but I am still inept enough to know, like, when flipping the switch is time, when it's time. Like, we've all been in fights before. I've probably yelled at a ref before, but like, and I've been really, 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 really mad.
Probably yelled at Kyle before.
Right. I probably had.
Your Wi-Fi is a little bit choppy there, Coach. I'm going to jump in.
When I hear Jason, do it.
Okay. But you brought up a good point about how, to me, when I was watching that video, it looked like his face just went blank. Like there was absolutely no communication at all, and the bystanders are saying, he's unconscious, dude. He's unconscious. What are you doing? And what was his response? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely no response at all, man. So we just read a book a couple podcasts ago called Talking to Strangers. It's a Malcolm Gladwell book. That book should be required reading for every person that puts on a badge, because it's at its core, it's about how human beings are just truly awful at communicating with one another. And it doesn't have to be something as, like he brings up the Sandra Bland case, which Sandra Bland was an inner city black girl, and she got pulled over by a rural white cop. And those two are as different across the human being species spectrum as you could possibly be, right? And so, of course, when they try to communicate with each other, their mannerisms, their body language, she lights a cigarette, and to her, she's thinking, I'm just doing this to calm down. But to him, he's saying that as, are you doing this to say, fuck you? Like, how dare you do this to me? So there's this, really harsh communication gap, and it couldn't be more clear than in that video where there is no communication. And it wasn't just him either. It was, the only other cop, they keep saying there's 4 cops, but I've only seen the other one.
I've only seen the Korean guy. That's all right. I've seen.
Yeah. So, I don't know where those guys were, but clearly the communication with them was either non-existent or it was faulty at best.
Well, what was the Korean guy even doing?
No idea.
He looked scared. He looked scared to death.
He looked terrified. He looked terrified.
He looked scared of David Shaven. He looked scared of the people that were saying stop. Like, the whole situation was awkward and weird. Like, it wasn't like anything normal that you've ever seen. And I was talking to my cousin the other day, and he told me that he got pulled over by a policeman he got a flat tire. My cousin got a flat tire. He was on the side of the road changing his tire. The policeman pulled over. He was on 270 in Columbus. Policeman pulled over and said, "It's dangerous out here," and just bent down and started changing his tire and told my cousin to look out. And my cousin went back to the back of the car. He said he was like really uncomfortable the whole time that it was going on because a police officer was like doing something nice for him, And he said he was so freaked out and wanted to get out of the situation so bad that the cop got done and said like a paragraph to him, and he never heard anything he said, and he got in his car and drove off. And he said, now it's been 2 years, and his biggest regret is that he never got to say thank you, And like, we can't live in a world like that, dude.
See,
we're like
that's where my biggest disconnect is from this, because obviously I'm a white guy that lives in the country. I don't know that feeling of being scared for your life when you get pulled over, whether like I'm scared I'm going to get a ticket.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine lights behind you and you're thinking if you're going to go home or not.
This could be it.
It's like a predator.
That's what gets me, like that feeling.
I got pulled over on 68. I was coming from Bethel. I was coaching at Bethel. I was coming home from Bethel, and I just turned off of 68 in Georgetown into 68, gonna head down the hill. And right past Tractor Supply, I got pulled over. And it was at night. And the police officer pulled me over. He's like, license and registration, please. What's your name? You were going 62 and a 55. Yes, didn't know I was going 62 and a 55. Didn't know that constituted getting pulled over. This is a nice Cadillac. Where'd you get this car at? Where do you work? All this type of stuff. And so I'm like pissed off, but like I have to watch the way that I react to the situation because it could turn not consequential, but deadly. Mm-hmm. Like with most things that we do in life, we understand that they could be consequential, like there could be a consequence. This situation was like potentially deadly. And at Felicity, I'm driving home last year, my uncle and I, again in a Cadillac. We get pulled over by a Higginsport cop almost to Ripley. And he was asking a bunch of questions. And I said, do you know, I asked him, did he know the mayor? And I asked him, did he know the town trustee? And he's like, yeah, I know him. And I said, well, could you go ahead and issue your ticket or whatever that you're going to do? Because after this is over, I'll show up for my court date and I'll make sure that they know that you pulled us over for driving a Cadillac through Higginsport while black. Because we weren't speeding. Who said I was going to give you a ticket? Completely changed his outlook, completely changed the way that he was. And the whole time he's talking to us, his hand's on his pistol, and you're asking me for license and registration, but when I reach for my glove box, you say freeze. I don't know where you guys keep your license and registration, but I keep mine in the glove box. So it does exist, and it sucks, and it's scary. And you guys live your whole life to make your parents proud and to be good fathers and to be good husbands and to be a productive citizen in society. And for most African Americans, we live our whole life attempting to prove that we're worthy citizens. So you guys are living to be productive citizens, and we're trying to prove that we can be worthy citizens, And a lot of that just comes from fear, fear and the unknown and being uneasy. And we have to come together as a country and be mindful that these bad police officers don't define us all, But if you are not the bad police officer and you have a voice and you don't use it, you're just as bad as the bad police officer. Like what you guys is doing is great because you're using your voice. You're using your platform to attempt to give people a different way of thinking. And that may give one person a potential reason to change.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, because I don't, because it was hard for us to come at this because, of course, especially where we live, we're not completely anti-cop, obviously. Like cops have done great things around here, but I'm also not anti-human being, and what was done was wrong. And what has been happening is wrong. I feel like you can be pro-cop, but also be pro-humanity as well. You don't have to – pro-cop doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything he did, because I don't. Like, he should be in prison for the rest of his life over what he did. But it also doesn't mean I want to go out and burn somebody's livelihood down because it happened. I don't know what the right way to go about this is to find a solution and to get a voice, because I've never been in that situation. Like I said, country boy here, I'm disconnected from the city where a lot of this happens. So it's
but it doesn't even have to. I mean,
yeah, it's tricky to find that balance.
Well, look, when I was a kid growing up, my grandpa was like, we have a game, I'm in high school, score a lot of points, and we're on our way to Lynchburg. We're getting, and I stop up there at my grandparents' house to get a bite to eat before the bus leaves. And I'm like, Papa, you going to the game tonight? And he's like, yeah, I don't really feel like it, but I have to. And I'm like, if you don't feel like it, don't go. Just listen to it on the radio. I can't let you go to Lynchburg alone. Like, that's how he looked at it, that's how people look at it, And my daughter just graduated from there, And I graduated 22 years ago. That's a long time ago. But my daughter graduated from there. And when I was a junior, I went there and was called the N-word during a game. 22 years later, my black daughter is the class president for the class of 2020 at Lynchburg Clay High School. You can't tell me things aren't changing. Like, you can't tell me that we still live in the same society that we once lived in. The problem, where it becomes problematic, is people are addressing the wrong issue, because this isn't race induced anymore. It's hate induced. And I have friends who I have black friends and white friends who I play softball with, who are cops for Cincinnati Police Department, and they patrol District 1, District 3, District 5, which is Avondale, Evendale, Smokestacks, Lincoln Terrace, Winton Woods, Walnut Hills. They're in the thick of it. They're on the front lines, and they are good cops. Black ones and the white ones. They're good cops. I've been on the phone with them before where they've had to my buddies are not the cops that when they talk to somebody, they have to have their hand on their gun. Those aren't my buddies. And my buddies don't do that. And one of the things that you were asking what we could do for police officers to make things, if you're scary, you can't be a police officer, man. Like, if tense situations make you uncomfortable, that's not the job for you. And we have to do a better job as a society, or the government has to do a better job of figuring out how to get to where people, if you have hate, you can't be a police officer. If you're scary, you can't be a police officer. This eliminates a lot of issues. You ask, how do you find out if somebody's scary or not? How do you find out? Because here's the deal. If there's a fight that breaks out and these cops are with their buddies and there's a fight that breaks out, if it's 10 on 10, if these cops were off duty, some of them would run and it would be 6 on 10. But if they have a gun, they'll grab their gun. You see what I'm saying? Like that gun and that badge to them gives them a certain or a different type of authority. And it's not supposed to. The authority that badge and that gun holds is the authority to protect and serve. And if someone is not a danger to society, physical force is not the option. If they're not a danger to society, a guy passed a bad $20 bill. What are you grabbing him for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So what if he takes off running? Who cares?
Right. Yeah.
It's a bad $20 bill. So when you're so ate up with the fact that, I'm a cop and I got to do my job, and when you're so ate up with it to that point, it's not healthy. Basketball coaches and football coaches that are high school coaches that are so ate up with it that they're on the phone for 2 or 3 hours a night trying to recruit other players from other school districts to get them to come to their schools. When they're that ate up with it, they're not healthy for the game. Like, when you're coaching, you should be culture building and character building. And you do that with the kids that are in your program. But when you're trying to go find kids from other places, you're not building culture and you're not building character. You're just trying to build a program that wins. So the point being, you can't be so ate up with it. Like, Dallas, if you were so ate up with drawing up sketches and plans for people's establishments, if you were so ate up with it to where you were willing to do anything to be the person that someone called to do that job, if it was that important to you, you would be bad for your career in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It may not result in murder, but you would be bad for your career. And I'm just using an analogy here. But some of these guys are ate up with it, man. They forget, I wonder how many lieutenants say before they leave the post every day, remember, guys, your job's to protect and serve, nothing more, nothing less. I wonder how often they hear that message.
There's clearly, you're kind of hitting at a point of, like, there's something to be said about just people in power and what they're given with that. I mean, give somebody control over a parking lot and see how much their attitude changes, like, so, I mean, that kind of ties back in with, if I only have to do this thing for 6 months to gain this power versus if I have to do it for 4 years, that's maybe going to deter some people for the quick power grab. I don't know. I mean, I know I have family that are good cops in my family. I'm not talking about you. Don't think that.
Right.
I mean, the percentage of bad cops out there are probably a very similar percentage of people that are protesting that turn into looters. Almost less than a tenth of 1%, almost nothing.
Yes,
but it's those really bad apples of each side. You can't have bad apples. There can't be bad apples in the police department. There can't be.
Well, I mean, that's the tough thing. I mean, with power, there's that old quote, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And but the tough thing is, how do you measure, how do you test, get a feel for
what's
character and integrity?
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, like in terms of, on the ministry side of things, that's one of the things we try to do as a church and in student ministry is, for us, it's about relationships. And I think there's police departments out there, like we saw the one in Flint, Michigan, where the guy took off his uniform.
That was great.
Yeah, he said, "Hey, I'm marching with you."
Yeah.
That was a huge statement, but that's a huge step into relationships, reconciliation, and saying, "Hey, this relationship's been damaged. Let me be the first one to step into repairing it." And that's always,
and that worked in that scenario.
Yes,
because he wasn't also being pelted by bricks.
Correct.
It took good people on the other side too for him to be able to do that.
Yeah. True.
Well, the issue comes every time you see every time that a police officer murders someone, they have a track record of bad behavior prior to the incident. This David Shaven, he's had 10 years or 12 years of incidents, like wrongful arrest and, he shot a couple people and he's arrested some people that were not in the wrong. And, being a police officer a lot of time is a judgment call, and I understand that. But, if you pay attention to the people who are charged with these crimes or who are the ones who are doing the killings, they're habitual behaviors. Like they have habitual offenders. Like the incident at hand is not the first issue at hand.
Yeah, we have a quote in our office where we say the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's real.
Yeah,
that's real. I mean, with the Trayvon Martin case in Florida, George Zimmerman had a long list of foul behavior and incident reports prior to him actually shooting that 14-year-old kid with a hoodie. He had a track record. It's habitual behavior. So now we go from the hate that's in a person. So, you can't fix stupid, and you're not going to be able to fix hate per se. But when a person shows you that they have hate in their heart and they're in a position of authority, you have to take that authority away from them. Because when you don't take that authority away from them, then it becomes an issue of entitlement. And then once it becomes an issue of entitlement, whoa, look out.
Mm-hmm.
Because entitled people are the most dangerous species in the world, man. A person that is entitled and feels like they are going to be, it's like sometimes, I'm a Christian, and sometimes I have friends that I grew up with in church and stuff, man. And they would always be like, nobody's perfect. We can repent. God forgives us for our sins. And I'm like, that don't mean that you got to keep on making
Romans 6.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you got to keep on. And they're like, well, nobody's perfect. And I'm like, No, there was nobody in the Bible that was perfect. There's nobody that's perfect. However, that doesn't mean that you can't live on a track to try to be perfect. You know, we all have our issues, and we all have our transgressions, but something that I think is lacking in the world in which we live, and I think that this coronavirus was one of God's ways. I think he's been working on us for years and years and years, for hundreds of years, to try to work on us. And I think he's done it other ways, but we've never seen anything like this pandemic. I think one of the things that God was trying to create in all man was discipline. Because what is the number one thing that you have to do to not get coronavirus? Be disciplined. You have to stay home. You have to wash your hands. You have to not handshake people. You got to not go to, only go out when it's essential. So I'm looking at it from a biblical standpoint, where I'm saying, okay, this is how God is telling us that we are living on his land, on his time, because this is borrowed time that we have, on his land, on his time, and we're living freely, like we don't have anything to lose, and we're not following any rules. So boom, what do? I have all power in my hands, and I'm going to teach you discipline. And so the people who have it will stay healthy. The people who don't will not stay healthy. And I know you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I've watched your podcast a few times before, and I think some of your topics are crazy. So
right on.
I found.
Hey, which one? Which ones?
Like about aliens and flying saucers and stuff, dude. I listened for like a while, man, and like I was intrigued by it because it's not stuff I'm into. But yeah, man, I'm just saying, like, I think everything, because I'm a man of faith, I think a lot of what goes on a day-to-day basis in the world in which we live is biblical, and I think that a lot of things are a message from the powers above, and I think that we are ignoring that message. But you can take a 5-year-old kid, you can take a 10-year-old kid, and you can give them a Bible, and you can say, read this, or read this, or read this, or read this, and you can say, what do you get from that? And the one common denominator that's always going to come back around is love. That's like some of the stuff in the Bible is above my head, definitely above kids' heads, but a lot of the stories in the Bible are love, and we don't live in a society that's based on love. We live in a society where we allow the few, and listen to what I'm saying, we allow the few to create the uproar that we're living in right now. And we got to change that. And the way that we change that is to change how, I'm not going to go Tupac and say we need to change the way we eat. We need to change the way I'm not going Tupac, but we got to change the way that we allow people, like the topic of this is what can we do to get police officers in better standing. I think more mental health evaluations. I think police officers should have mandatory counseling. I don't care. There should be a counselor in the police station, in the post, in the depot, somebody for those people to talk to. So when they have a rough night and they have an altercation at a club and there was a fight and somebody pulled a gun out on them and they barely made it home, there should be somebody there for them to talk to before they have to take that home.
That's a good point. I mean, we had a police officer guest that was going to join us today, but couldn't because she's in the middle of, she's no days off right now. She's, battling riots this evening. So to your point, I mean, what is her psyche like right now? What's her stress level like? And you were saying earlier, I mean, I don't know how many days she's worked in a row, but you get to that point where all you're seeing is chaos. What does that do to the human psychology?
Well, that's to the point, like, it doesn't matter how good of a cop you've been, how good of a cop you are. If you're in that situation right now, you're scared for your life because the people that are on the other side don't give two shits of how good of a cop you've been. They see you as the man that's been murdering people for no reason.
Well, another thing is about the negativity in the world is the media. Everything you watch on the news that's spotlighted is something negative. How often do you see the positive story of this cop helping this family get home or whatever? Or like even the coronavirus, they always talk about total cases, total deaths, but I never see the recoveries.
Yeah.
It's never the positives. It's always the bad.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I loved Killer Mike's comment about, hey, CNN, what comes around goes around.
Right.
Where they got their, they got the front of their building just demolished. Stop preaching
I called 5, I called 9, I called 12, and I called Fox 19 last Saturday. I said, I'm having a pray for peace rally at Mount Ord Park in the middle of town. Gave them the address. You think anybody showed up?
No, it's positive.
Because
I was praying for peace.
I heard about that actually on Facebook because I like to go through the comments of everything and see what people were saying. And a lot of people were trying to tell people that they were planning riots and protests in Mount Orb. And then somebody finally said, guys, it's a prayer. Nobody's protesting. Nobody's rioting. We're praying. So even we as people, not even the media, are trying to spin things not in our own benefit, but it's almost like a like race, like who can get the most attention on social media from this. Because I'm seeing a lot of that too in these protests. And I understand, I mean, we live in an age where it's the best way to get your message out. Every one of those protesters had their phones pointed at the cops.
Did you see the video where in LA where the Lexus pulls up to a building and they're putting plywood over the windows, and they literally just pull up, a girl pops out, takes a picture like she's doing some kind of work to board up this business. They snap a picture, and then she gets right back in the car and leaves. Like, just give me the attention. I don't care what.
I think that's where a lot of the rioting is coming from. It's people that just think they're being a part of something. The true people that I think are trying to make changes are the people that's going down there and trying to protest, trying to have their voice heard.
There was a situation in Louisville where a gentleman was looting, and there were 5,000 people protesting, and there's a guy looting, and like some of the black protesters grabbed the guy and drug him over to the police and was like, man, do something with this dude. He's not with us.
Because it makes them look bad.
We're not down here for that. Do something with him. Take him to jail. Send him home. I don't care what you do with him, but get him away from us because he's acting like a fool.
I would imagine it's a similar feeling as a white guy when I see a white cop do something really stupid to a black guy. It's like,
right.
What are you doing, man?
Yeah. I wish they would make a bigger deal out of an article I saw going on in Indianapolis. They said they've got some black teenagers, some white teenagers, and they're cleaning up. They're scrubbing the graffiti. They're cleaning up the debris, broken glass. That's probably a liability issue if you got minors around. But I was like, man, like that. Mm-hmm. Why can't we get more coverage of that? Yeah. The because right thing.
It's not bleeding, it's not leading.
Yeah, because that's true.
That's what's so tough is that we can't get any sort of positive news. So we have this broad picture, right? And we get to see this.
And it makes it seem like
we get this little bit.
Everybody down there is doing that, which ain't the case.
Yeah,
like
I had a great day yesterday. Went golfing. Played like shit, but I got to at least be out in the sun and smack some balls around, whatever. Having a great day, and then you come home and jumped on Twitter, and it was like the worst decision I made of the entire day. It's like, I could just feel like the tension in my shoulders and just like, oh my God, is this really like the world that I'm living in? And I was telling these guys earlier, like, I think it's hitting me in a weird way right now because I'm bringing a baby into the world in, a couple months. So I'm like, man, this is what, my little guy is going to have to deal with, like, on day one. If COVID wasn't enough, now there's this chaos. And what's going to happen in the next 2 months? What's going to happen in chapter 7 of the book 2020,
Yeah.
So
Protect them, Dallas. Protect them, man.
I'm hoping we missed out on the murder hornets. I'm hoping that goes away.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's very, 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 it's very transparent to somebody who has sense enough to understand. And this is just piggybacking off everything that you were just talking about, because everything that you guys talked about had nothing to do in a negative way with black and white. Like, the news is making this a black and white issue. The media is making this a black and white issue. And it's not a black and white issue. It is a hate issue. My buddy told me that's a Cincinnati police officer that 70% of the people that are downtown protesting are white. 70%.
Wow.
And I'm going to throw this out there. This is factual information. Didn't come from that buddy that I'm talking about in particular. It came from another buddy in another police force in another city that I know from college. But a lot of the people that are doing the looting are officers of the law.
Heard that.
So
Wow.
I'm just putting that out there. A guy that I know told me that he worked a drug case with not one but 2 informants that were looting. So he said that they were not police officers, but they were informants. So they are informants for the police departments, for the districts. And so basically what that comes down to is, they're the epitome of what in the streets they would call a snitch or whatever, in street lingo. But he said that they could be doing this on their own, but they could also be doing this because they've been persuaded to do this because it enhances the narrative.
What about all the cities that are protesting? These random skids of bricks are showing up just out of nowhere. There's nothing being built. There's just bricks laying around on the street for people just to pick up and throw.
Right. Like,
Who's dropping these off?
Mm-hmm.
They dropped dope.
Who's paying for it?
They said in the 70s they dropped crack cocaine or cocaine in Bed-Stuy, New York, from a helicopter. And that's an urban legend. But they say they just flew across Bed-Stuy and just dropped cocaine. And I don't know that has to be true, but I believe in conspiracies, and I know this isn't a show on politics, but I'm just going to throw this out there. And I hope no one takes offense to this, but because I'm going to speak freely, but I'm hard pressed.
Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to believe, and I love everyone, so don't misconstrue what I'm saying, but I'm hard pressed to believe. Me personally, I'm not a Trump guy, You would have to understand that me being an African-American male, to be able to have been in the prime of my life during the time that we had our first black president, that was a black or white issue for me because we had 43 presidents before that didn't have any ethnicity other than Caucasian. Well, there was, but not African-American, of African-American descent. But that was a big step to me. That was a huge step to me. I was proud, I was proud to be a black man at that time. Donald Trump doesn't make me any less proud, but here's what I will say. I don't like the guy. I didn't like him before. I told Shane the other day at work, like, 20 years ago, if somebody would have asked me as a 20-year-old kid what I knew about Donald Trump, one word would have came out of my mouth. One statement would have came out of my mouth. He's a bigot. That's the one thing that I would have known. Now, in terms of what he has done as the president of the United States, you have to, an intelligent man would separate his bigotry from his presidency, okay? You have to compartmentalize if you have any sense of intelligence, right? But I'm hard-pressed to believe that the only 5 people that we could have run for a Democratic nomination without money being involved are 2 75-year-old white guys, 2 women, and a gay guy. To tell me that there's not a 50-year-old man, and I don't care what ethnicity they are. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're black. If they're a United States citizen and they're 45 years of age, I'm hard-pressed to believe that there's not one person who is in this country that doesn't have an Ivy League education that could be a substantial candidate for the presidency. But here's what
Google my boy Andrew Yang after we get off this podcast.
I'm going to. But here's what
check him out.
I will. Here's what we run into. We run into a culture and a society that's built on financial power, right? And so what happens is you take a guy like Barack Obama, who was a community leader in Chicago, $85,000 a year gig. He wants to run for president of the United States. Well, we have a president that is one of the wealthiest men in the world, not in the United States of America, one of the wealthiest men in the world. So now you're going to leave your $85,000 a year job. And this is one of my conspiracies. You're going to leave your $85,000 a year job to pursue a $275,000 a year job that you have to be elected to work, right? So you got to have some luck. You got to have some campaigning. You got to do a lot of stuff to make that work. Or you can have a guy tell you, I'll give you $4 million a year for the next 4 years and $275,000 for the rest of your life to not run for the presidency of the United States. You let me know what you need, and I'll make sure it happens for you and your family. And I'm not saying that this has happened. I'm just saying that when we look at our country and the state that it's in, even if it's Andrew Yang, is that the only candidate that makes you feel comfortable? In a whole United States of America, you got one guy that makes you feel comfortable about succeeding the president of the United States. That's a scary thought, because there's a reason why people are not pursuing these type of opportunities, because there's a lot of very intelligent, educated, wise, street savvy, book savvy, politically enhanced people in this world. And the thought that we don't have any of them that are ready to pursue the presidency is a scary thought to me. It's scary, guys. Well, I feel like I'd be a better candidate than some of the people we got.
I think part of it is the problem is the two-party system. They stop a lot of these younger, more liberal, well, not liberal, that's a bad word, but open-minded thoughts when it's either Republican or Democrat. We don't get to choose who they really put up. They give us a handful of people, and that's all we get out of 350 million citizens. Yeah, we get 2 guys, and the guy the Democrats pick is basically a scarecrow. Yeah. He don't even know what planet he's on.
Yeah. By the way, if you don't vote for him, you're not black.
Yeah.
That's the guy that's leading. That's leading race relations right now. Don't vote for him, you're not black.
So again, it becomes, and so we'll go back to this again, because this is what my stance has been built on. Again, we go back to that Democratic nomination. The word hate comes to mind. Because if you don't vote for me, you're not black. So so it's another hate issue. It's not a love issue. It's not an issue of saying, if you want this, and this, you'll vote for me. And I don't. So, and I'm gonna say this: I don't think that what he was saying, I don't think he meant that the way that it sounded. I think.
Think he was joking?
No, I don't think he was joking. I think he was very, very, very serious. I think he was very serious, unfortunately. But I think that he was trying to say that if you want to see a change in the African American community, I'm the person, because Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about you. I think that's what he was trying to say. I just wish he would have said it that way. I just wish he would have said that. If you want to see a change in the black community and you want to see if you want to see your lives change as you know it, you want to see what's best for your people, for our people, you need to vote for me, because if you vote for Donald Trump, you're still going to be suppressed. I think that's what he was saying. And something that you guys don't know is, as a black person, a black man, I felt suppressed all over again the day that Donald Trump was elected to the office of the presidency of the United States. I felt suppressed again. And I can't even say necessarily why, but I felt suppressed again. And I didn't feel that way with Ronald Reagan. I didn't feel that way with George Bush. Naturally, I didn't feel that way with a Democratic Barack Obama. But I felt that way for the last 4 years, guys. Because he just wears bigotry all over his shirt and all over his tie and all over his suit. And this isn't about politics, so I'm not going to get into that. I'm sorry, I apologize. But I just can't, and I work, the people that I work for, they love him and they swear by him. And,
That's Shane's boy there.
Yeah, but it's Shane's boy because he is married into that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all he hears.
Yeah.
And they're really good people. They've been good to me. They've been good to me. And they're in the class that that Donald Trump caters to. So they're supposed to like him. But I'm not in that class. And so, like you say, it's a two-party thing, and that's where we get to where we're at with that whole process. But I just want an America that I feel comfortable with my kids growing up in. And I didn't get to grow up in it, and it doesn't look like my kids are going to grow up in it. And I try to do everything in my power. My daughter is 18 years old, graduated from her class president, top 15, very intelligent. She's scared, dude. 18 years old and she's scared. At the time of your life where you're supposed to be ready to take on the world. When I was 18, I was ready to take on the world. And she's scared to death. She's scared of COVID-19. She's scared of the police. She's scared to go to Cincinnati. She's scared to talk to anybody that's not from Lynchburg. She's scared to talk about politics. She's scared to talk about the world that we live in. She's scared, man. And she shouldn't have to be.
Yeah, well, she's not alone. I mean, a lot of people are scared right now for a multitude of reasons.
It's not even a race thing anymore about that.
No,
kids in general
it's a hate
are just
thing.
scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hate thing, and it's a I don't know how to feel about this COVID-19 thing. I think that it's real, and I know that it's real, and I'm happy that Mike DeWine did whatever he did, but to kind of slow down the curve and fight, and that type thing. But fellas, how real is it?
Yeah,
I
think that ties back into this talk we were having about media and a broad spectrum of the picture, but we're only getting a little piece of it. I think, frankly, that might play a little bit into the perception of Donald Trump. We can save that topic for another day, but
yeah, let's don't get into that because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that.
I think that's part of why the media is fanning the flames of this killing, I mean, it was terrible, but they're trying to take all of your attention away from their fuck up on the COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you got a preacher sitting next to you. Watch your mouth.
Sorry.
I've counted. You've all cussed now.
Well, I can
It's
repent.
your turn. Come on. Come on.
We can
No, I'm
repent.
good.
Nobody from your church is watching, I'm sure.
You might be surprised. I had a kid subscribe to your channel.
There we go. All right.
But you know, here's the thing, guys, and I'm gonna say this, and I gotta get ready to sign off and let you guys
Sure.
do your show because I'm sure you've got other topics to discuss. But you know,
We're about to wrap up. You're good, man.
this is the only thing that matters to me, man.
Right on.
Right? This flag, 50 stars, man, and 13 stripes. Okay, and we come from, we as a people come from something else. This didn't belong to any of us, right? We stole this from somebody. Europeans stole this from somebody else, man. So let's talk about what's really real, right? So the Europeans stole this from somebody else, and then when they stole it from somebody else, they made it an issue where other people couldn't come, right? And then these ships started coming, and these people started coming from Africa, dude. And it was a scary thing, right? So if they're going to be here, we're going to put them to work. So, you know, we worked, and my ancestors, they picked cotton, and they worked in fields, and they farmed, and they had white men, slave owners, sleeping with their women and impregnating their women, and you know, a lot of foul stuff took place, right? Those things don't take place anymore. So we're in a better place now than we were then. And my fellow Black Americans, they hate it when I say that. They don't want to hear it, but it's the reality of the situation. I'm in a better place than my dad was. My dad was in a better place than his dad was. His dad was in a better place than his dad was. We've gradually gotten better, okay?
Yeah. So it's our duty to push that.
To continue to push the
so that your daughter's kids can have a better world and not fear when they have red and blue lights, pulling up behind them.
Exactly.
That's what's got to be removed. So I think we can probably end it here. We've gone a while. So Jason, I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. And by all means, come back. Guys, listening to his podcast, Talk Sports to Me. Kyle, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, man.
We appreciate it.
Kyle,
Hey,
Kyle,
guys,
hopefully you got some of my games this year, man. Maybe I can get a couple calls now.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'll slip you a 20 to lose a little integrity. Everybody else is doing it.
Hey, if you need
do some Chad Johnson stuff.
I know sometimes you guys need help for scrimmages. Let me know.
I will for sure, man.
Yeah.
I will for sure. Brad, I'll see you next week.
All right, man.
And to the smart guy in the room on the far right that I can only see his bicep, keep lifting, man. Your bicep's growing. I can see it.
Right on.
See you guys.
See you, man.
See ya.